I first noticed something was wrong on a Tuesday morning when Mrs. Chen's newspaper was still lying on her doorstep at 11 o'clock. For the 3 years I'd lived in apartment 214, directly across the hall from her unit 215, I'd never seen that newspaper sit there past 7 in the morning. Mrs. Chen was like clockwork. Every single day, rain or shine, I'd hear her door open at exactly 6:45, the rustle of paper, then the soft click of her lock sliding back into place. But that Tuesday, the newspaper sat there, untouched, the plastic wrapper already gathering condensation in the humid Seattle air. I'm Sarah Mitchell, a freelance photographer who works from home, which means I notice things, small things, the kind of details most people miss because they're rushing off to offices and meetings. I notice when the guy in 212 starts leaving for work 20 minutes earlier because he's trying to impress a new boss. I notice when the college student in 218 stops ordering late-night pizza because she's finally taking her health seriously. And I definitely notice when an 82-year-old woman who hasn't broken her routine in 3 years suddenly goes silent. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe she'd gone to visit family. Maybe she was sick and sleeping in. Maybe she'd finally taken that trip to Taiwan she always talked about. But Mrs. Chen would have told me. We weren't exactly friends, but we had a relationship. Every Thursday evening I'd bring her prints of the photographs I'd taken that week, nature shots mostly. And she'd make me jasmine tea and tell me stories about growing up in Taipei. She'd critique my composition with the sharp eye of someone who'd spent 40 years as an art teacher before retiring. She'd never leave without saying goodbye. By Wednesday there were 2 newspapers. By Thursday, 3. I knocked on her door Thursday afternoon. No answer. I pressed my ear against the wood, listening for the television she always kept on, the classical music station she loved, anything. Silence. Looking for Mrs. Chen? I jumped, turning to find Marcus, the building maintenance guy, standing behind me with his toolbox. Yeah, have you seen her? I asked. He shrugged. Nope. But her rent's paid through the end of the year, so... He trailed off, already losing interest, already moving down the hallway toward whatever leaky faucet or broken outlet needed his attention. Doesn't that seem weird to you? I called after him. That she's just gone? People travel, Sarah. It's not a crime. But Marcus didn't understand. Mrs. Chen didn't travel. She barely left the building except for her weekly grocery trips on Saturday mornings and her monthly doctor's appointments on the first Thursday of every month. She told me once that at her age, routine wasn't just comfort, it was survival. By Friday, I was genuinely worried. I went downstairs to the building manager's office, a cramped space that always smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. I need you to do a wellness check on apartment 215, I told Janet, our perpetually exhausted building manager. She didn't even look up from her computer. Why? Mrs. Chen hasn't been seen in almost a week. Her newspapers are piling up. Something's wrong. Janet sighed, the kind of deep, world-weary sigh that said she had 99 problems and I was trying to make it an even 100. Did you call her family? I don't have their numbers. Then I suggest you mind your business. She finally looked at me, her expression flat. Mrs. Chen is an adult. If she wants to go somewhere without announcing it to the whole building, that's her right. But no buts, Sarah. Unless there's a smell, a leak, or a clear emergency, I'm not authorizing entry into someone's apartment. That's the policy. I left the office frustrated, my photographer's instinct screaming that something was wrong. I've spent my entire career learning to trust my eye, to notice what others miss. And everything about this situation was off. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Mrs. Chen, about her rigid routine, about the way she'd looked the last time I'd seen her. It had been the previous Thursday, our usual tea and photograph ritual. She'd seemed distracted, I realized now. She'd spent more time looking out her window than at my prints, and she'd asked me something strange. Sarah, she'd said, her accent still thick after 50 years in America, if you saw something wrong, something dangerous, would you tell someone, even if no one would believe you? I'd laughed it off, assumed she was talking about one of her detective shows. Mrs. Chen loved mysteries, spent her evenings watching true crime documentaries and reading thriller novels. But now, lying in my bed at 2 in the morning, that question felt different, heavier. Saturday morning I did something I'd never done before. I became that nosy neighbor everyone complains about. Mrs. Chen always did her grocery shopping at 9 o'clock on Saturday mornings. I knew this because I'd photographed the farmer's market across the street dozens of times and always saw her there, pulling her wheeled shopping cart behind her, taking exactly 45 minutes to make her rounds before heading home. At 8:30, I positioned myself in the lobby with my camera, pretending to photograph the morning light coming through the Art Deco windows. At 9 o'clock, no Mrs. Chen. At 9:15, still nothing. By 9:30, I was certain. Something was very, very wrong. I went back upstairs and stood in front of her door, the pile of newspapers now 6 deep. I knocked again, harder this time. "Mrs. Chen, it's Sarah. I'm worried about you. Please, if you're in there, just let me know you're okay." Nothing. I tried the door handle, not expecting it to turn. It didn't, but something else happened. As I leaned against the door, my ear pressed to the wood. I heard it. A single sound. Faint, but unmistakable. A phone ringing inside the apartment. It rang 4 times, then stopped. Then, 30 seconds later, it started again. Someone was trying to reach her. Someone who, like me, was starting to worry. I pulled out my own phone and was about to dial 911 when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. A man appeared at the end of the hallway, mid-50s, expensive suit, leather briefcase. He walked straight to Mrs. Chen's door without even glancing at me. "Can I help you?" I asked. He looked at me then, his expression carefully neutral. "I'm Robert Chen. This is my mother's apartment." Relief flooded through me. "Oh, thank God. I've been so worried." "Is she okay? Where is she?" Robert Chen's face didn't change. "My mother is fine. She's staying with family. But her newspapers, I'll take care of them." He pulled out a key, began unlocking the door. "It's just, she didn't mention she was leaving, and my mother doesn't owe you explanations about her life." He pushed the door open, blocking my view of the interior. "I appreciate your concern, but it's unnecessary." He stepped inside and closed the door firmly behind him, leaving me standing in the hallway with 6 newspapers at my feet and a feeling in my gut that screamed something was wrong. Because in 3 years of Thursday evening teas, Mrs. Chen had never once mentioned a son named Robert. She'd talked about her daughter Linda in California, her grandson James in medical school, her late husband's brother in Taiwan, but never a son, never Robert. And there was something else, something that made my hands go cold. As Robert Chen had opened that door, just for a second, I'd glimpsed the interior of Mrs. Chen's apartment. The lights were off, the curtains drawn, and on the small table by the door, I'd seen something that didn't belong. A black leather notebook, exactly like the one Mrs. Chen had been writing in obsessively the last time I'd seen her, was lying open, but it was too far away for her to have just left it there. Someone had been reading it. Someone had been inside her apartment, going through her things. I stood there in that hallway for a long time, listening to Robert Chen moving around inside, the sound of drawers opening and closing, the rustle of papers. When he finally emerged 20 minutes later, he was carrying a cardboard box, and that black notebook was nowhere to be seen. "You should forget about my mother," he said as he locked the door behind him. "She's fine, and she values her privacy." Then he walked away, leaving me with more questions than answers and the absolute certainty that Mrs. Chen was not fine, not safe, and not staying with family. Something had happened to my neighbor, and for some reason, someone was going to great lengths to make sure no one looked too closely. But they'd made one mistake. They'd assumed that Sarah Mitchell, the quiet photographer in apartment 214, would just mind her business and move on. They didn't know that I'd built my entire career on seeing what others missed, and I'd just seen enough to know that Mrs. Chen needed help, whether her supposed son wanted me to know it or not. I spent the rest of Saturday researching Mrs. Chen's family online, my photographer's eye now focused through a different lens entirely. It took me less than an hour to confirm what my gut had already told me. Mrs. Chen did have a son named Robert, but he died in a car accident 17 years ago. I found the obituary in the Seattle Times archives, complete with a photo. The man who'd shown up at her apartment looked nothing like the Robert Chen who died at 38, leaving behind a wife and 2 young children. So who was he? And why was he pretending to be her son? I made a list the way I do when I'm planning a photo shoot. Facts, evidence, timeline. Fact 1. Mrs. Chen disappeared sometime after Thursday evening, 8 days ago when I'd last seen her. Fact 2. She'd been acting strange that night, distracted, asking cryptical questions about witnessing something dangerous. Fact 3. She'd been writing obsessively in a black notebook. Fact 4. A man claiming to be her dead son had entered her apartment with a key and removed that notebook. Fact 5. No one else seemed to care. Not the building manager, not the maintenance guy, not the other neighbors. That last fact bothered me the most. I'd lived in this building for 3 years, and while we weren't exactly a close-knit community, people generally noticed when someone disappeared. But when I'd tried to talk to Helen in 213 about Mrs. Chen, she'd looked at me blankly. The Chinese lady. I think she moved out last month. She didn't move out. Her furniture is still there. Helen had shrugged. Maybe she's in a home or something. You know how it is with old people. But Mrs. Chen wasn't just any old person. She was sharp, independent, fierce. 3 weeks ago, she'd climbed 4 flights of stairs when the elevator was broken, refusing help, insisting that exercise kept her young. She wasn't someone who'd suddenly need a home. Sunday morning, I made a decision. If no one else was going to investigate, I would. I started by talking to Chen's grocery, the small market 2 blocks away where she'd shopped for the past 20 years. The owner, Mr. Park, knew her well. Mrs. Chen? He looked concerned when I asked. I haven't seen her in maybe 9 or 10 days. Is she sick? I don't know. That's what I'm trying to find out. Mr. Park wiped his hands on his apron. That's not like her. She comes every Saturday, always buys the same things. Jasmine rice, bok choy, those ginger candies she likes. Last time she was here, though, he paused, thinking. She bought different things. Batteries, one of those small flashlights, a notebook. She seemed nervous, kept looking over her shoulder. Did she say anything? Just that she was working on a project. She made a joke about becoming a detective in her old age. He smiled at the memory, then the smile faded. You think something bad happened to her? I think something's wrong. If you see her or if anyone comes asking about her, will you call me? I gave him my number. Back at my building, I tried a different approach. I knocked on every door on the 2nd floor asking about Mrs. Chen. Most people barely remembered her. A few recalled seeing her in the hallway but couldn't tell me when. One elderly man in 217 got angry with me for bothering him, but then I talked to Dimitri in 219, a grad student who was almost never home. The Chinese lady across from you? He nodded. Yeah, I saw something weird about a week ago. Maybe 8 days? I was coming home late, like 2 in the morning, and there were these 2 guys in suits standing outside her door. They weren't knocking or anything, just standing there, waiting. My heart started pounding. What did they look like? I don't know, man, it was dark. But they had this vibe, you know, like security guards or cops or something. Very serious. When they saw me, they left immediately. Took the stairs instead of waiting for the elevator. What day was this? He thought about it. Last Thursday night, well, technically Friday morning, Thursday night. Just hours after I'd had tea with Mrs. Chen, after she'd asked that strange question about witnessing something dangerous, I went back to my apartment and pulled out my calendar, writing down everything I knew, creating a timeline. Then I did what I do best. I looked through my photographs. I take pictures constantly, almost compulsively. Street photography, architectural shots, candid moments. I have thousands of images on my hard drive organized by date and location. I started going through the ones from the week before Mrs. Chen disappeared, looking for anything unusual. And then I found it. 9 days ago, I'd been photographing the sunset from my living room window. In the background of one shot, barely visible, was Mrs. Chen's window across the air shaft. She was standing there, holding something up to her window. When I zoomed in, enhancing the image, I could see it clearly. She was photographing something herself, her phone pressed against the glass, aimed downward toward the alley behind our building. I checked the timestamp. 7:32 in the evening. I pulled up more photos from that same session, found 3 more shots where she was visible. In all of them, she was photographing or filming something in that alley. I grabbed my camera and went to the back stairwell, the one that led to the alley exit. I hadn't been back there in months. Nobody really used it except for trash removal. The stairwell was dim, smelling of old concrete and mildew. At the bottom, a heavy door led outside. The alley was narrow, lined with dumpsters and recycling bins. I walked slowly, photographing everything, looking for anything unusual. Most of the space was taken up by the building's trash, but at the far end I noticed something odd. Fresh tire marks in the grime, like a vehicle had been parked there recently. And next to the marks, scattered on the ground, were cigarette butts. Lots of them, at least 20 or 30, all the same brand. Someone had been spending a lot of time in this alley, watching, waiting. I photographed everything, then headed back inside. As I climbed the stairs, I heard voices above me. I slowed, recognizing one of them. Robert Chen, the fake son, was on the 2nd floor landing talking to someone. Told you the old woman didn't tell anyone, he was saying. I have the notebook. Everything she documented is secure. You're sure? Another male voice, deeper with an accent I couldn't place. I'm sure. The only one who seems to care that she's gone is the photographer across the hall, and she doesn't know anything. Keep it that way. I heard footsteps descending toward me. I had maybe 5 seconds before they'd see me in the stairwell. I pushed through the nearest door, finding myself on the 1st floor, my heart hammering. They knew about me. They were watching me. I waited 2 minutes, then slipped back upstairs to my apartment, locking both the deadbolt and the chain behind me. Through my peephole, I watched fake Robert Chen and another man in a dark suit walk past, heading toward the elevator. I sat down at my computer, my hands shaking slightly, and started going through more photographs. If Mrs. Chen had been documenting something in that alley, maybe I'd captured it too. I pulled up every shot I'd taken from my windows over the past month, hundreds of images, and started scanning through them. Most were nothing. Pigeons, clouds, light patterns on buildings. But then, 12 days ago, I found something. A black SUV parked in the alley at 3 in the morning. I remembered taking that shot because I'd been experimenting with low-light photography, couldn't sleep, and had been shooting the city at night. In the image, the SUV's back doors were open, and 2 men were unloading something. The angle was wrong for me to see clearly what it was, but there was another detail that made my blood run cold. In the corner of the frame, barely visible, was Mrs. Chen's window, and she was there, in the darkness of her apartment, filming the same scene. She'd seen something, she'd documented it, and now she was gone. I spent the next 3 hours going through every photograph, finding 5 more images of that SUV over the course of a week. Always at night, always with the same 2 men, always unloading or loading things I couldn't quite make out. Then I found the photograph that changed everything. It was from 10 days ago, early evening, still enough light to see clearly. The SUV was there again, but this time one of the men had turned toward my window as I'd taken the shot. The image had captured his face perfectly. I ran it through a reverse image search, not really expecting results. I got them anyway. Viktor Kozlov, wanted in connection with a smuggling operation that had been busted in Portland 3 months ago. The news article said he'd disappeared before authorities could arrest him. They believed he was still in the Pacific Northwest, still operating. And apparently he was operating out of the alley behind my building. I sat back, my mind racing. Mrs. Chen had witnessed something, probably the same things I'd accidentally photographed. She'd documented it in her notebook, and then she'd disappeared. And men claiming to be her family had shown up to clean up the evidence. I should have called the police right then. That would have been the smart thing, the safe thing. But I thought about how Janet, the building manager, had dismissed my concerns, how the neighbors barely remembered Mrs. Chen, how even Mr. Park, who'd known her for 20 years, had just shrugged it off as odd, but not alarming. If I called the police with a story about a missing neighbor no one else cared about, would they believe me? Would they act fast enough? I made a different decision. I decided to document everything myself, to build an undeniable case before going to the authorities. I would do what Mrs. Chen had been doing. I would be the witness she couldn't be anymore. I set up my camera on a tripod by my window, aimed at the alley, and programmed it to take a shot every 30 seconds throughout the night. Then, I pulled out my backup camera and started going through all my memory cards from the past month, systematically organizing every image that showed that alley. It was after midnight when I finished. I was uploading everything to a secure cloud drive, making sure there were copies that couldn't be destroyed if someone came for my equipment, when I heard it. A sound from the hallway, soft but distinct. Someone was trying Mrs. Chen's door handle. I grabbed my phone and crept to my peephole. The hallway appeared empty, but I could hear breathing on the other side of Mrs. Chen's door. Then, slowly, impossibly, her door began to open. Someone had a key. Someone was going inside her apartment at 1 in the morning. I made a split-second decision. I grabbed my camera, turned off my lights, and slowly, carefully, opened my door, just a crack. Through the gap, I aimed my lens across the hall and started shooting. The images captured everything. A figure in dark clothes entering Mrs. Chen's apartment. The same figure emerging 15 minutes later with something in their hands, something that glinted in the dim hallway light. Keys. They were carrying Mrs. Chen's keys. I got 3 clear shots of the person's face before they disappeared down the hallway toward the stairs. And even in the dim light, even through my viewfinder, I recognized him. It was Marcus, our building maintenance man, the one who'd shrugged off Mrs. Chen's disappearance like it was nothing, the one who had access to every apartment in the building, the one who I now realized had probably given Viktor Kozlov and his people the access they needed to use our alley for whatever illegal operation they were running. I closed my door and locked it, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then I downloaded the images from my camera and added them to my cloud drive. I had evidence now, real, undeniable evidence, but I also had something more dangerous. I had attention. Monday morning, I woke up to find a note slipped under my door. It was simple, typed on plain white paper. "Stop asking questions about Mrs. Chen. This is your only warning." I stood in my doorway, the note trembling in my hands, and realized that the game had changed. I wasn't just investigating anymore. I was a target. I photographed the note from every angle, documented it, uploaded it to my cloud drive. Then I made coffee and tried to think rationally about my next move. The smart thing would be to go to the police immediately, but something held me back. If Marcus was involved and he had keys to every apartment in the building, then I wasn't safe here. And if Viktor Kozlov was as dangerous as those news articles suggested, would the police even be able to protect me before someone made me disappear like Mrs. Chen? I needed more evidence, something concrete enough that the police would have to take action immediately. I decided to check Mrs. Chen's mailbox. It was a long shot, but maybe there was something there, some clue about what she'd been investigating or where she might be now. The mailboxes were in the lobby, a wall of small brass doors with tiny keys. Mrs. Chen's box was overflowing, envelopes stuffed so tight the door wouldn't close properly. I looked around to make sure I was alone, then carefully pulled out the stack of mail. Most of it was junk, grocery store flyers, credit card offers, a magazine subscription. But there was one letter that made me stop breathing. It was from the Seattle Police Department, Property and Evidence Division, dated 11 days ago. I shouldn't have opened it, I knew that. But I did anyway, carefully slicing the envelope with my keys. Inside was a form letter confirming that evidence item number 74392 had been logged into their system. The evidence was described as one digital video file, duration 4 minutes 37 seconds, submitted by Chen Margaret, regarding suspicious activity at 3215 Elm Street. 3215 Elm Street, my building's address. Mrs. Chen had gone to the police. She'd submitted video evidence, and less than a week later she'd disappeared. I photographed the letter, put it back in the envelope, and carefully returned all the mail to her box. My hands were shaking. If the police had her evidence, why hadn't they done anything? Why hadn't they noticed when the woman who'd filed the report vanished? I went back to my apartment and did something I should have done days ago. I called the police non-emergency line. "I'd like to report a missing person," I said when someone finally answered. The operator took down the information, Mrs. Chen's name, her age, her address, when I'd last seen her. She asked if Mrs. Chen had any health issues, any reason she might wander off. "No," I said firmly. "She's sharp, independent, and she recently submitted evidence to your property division about suspicious activity at our building. Then she disappeared. I think the two things are connected." There was a pause. "Hold on, let me transfer you to someone who can help." I was put on hold for 7 minutes. When someone finally picked up, it was a Detective Morrison. "Ms. Mitchell, you said Margaret Chen filed a report with us?" "Yes, evidence item 74392, a video file about suspicious activity here." Another pause. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm looking at our system right now. There's no evidence item with that number, and I'm not showing any reports filed by a Margaret Chen in the past 6 months." My mouth went dry. "That's impossible. I saw the letter from your department. It was dated." "Ma'am, I'm telling you what our system shows. There's nothing here. Then someone deleted it. Someone removed her evidence from your system. That's a serious accusation." His voice had gone from patient to skeptical. "Are you sure you didn't misread the evidence number?" "I'm a photographer. I don't misread numbers. I photographed the letter. I can send it to you." "Please do, but Ms. Mitchell, I have to ask, have you actually filed a missing person report for Mrs. Chen?" "I'm trying to do that right now." "No, I mean, has anyone filed one? Her family?" "Her family claims she's staying with them, but they're lying. The man who showed up claiming to be her son is not her son. Her real son died 17 years ago." The skepticism in his voice deepened. "Ms. Mitchell, this sounds like a family matter. If her relatives say she's with them, then—" "She's not with them. She's missing, and people are threatening me to stop looking for her." "Have you received direct threats?" "Yes. A note was slipped under my door this morning." "Do you still have it?" "Yes." "Don't touch it anymore. I'll send an officer to collect it and take your statement. But Ms. Mitchell, I want you to understand something. Without evidence of foul play, without family members concerned about her welfare, there's a limit to what we can do. Adults have the right to go where they want without telling their neighbors." He said it kindly, but the message was clear. They thought I was paranoid, overreacting, maybe even a little unhinged. "Please," I said, "just send someone. I have photographs, evidence, things that prove something's wrong. Someone will be there within a few hours." He hung up. I sat there, phone in my hand, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt. 2 hours later, there was a knock on my door. I checked the peephole, saw a uniformed officer, and opened up. Officer Davis was young, maybe 26 or 27, with a professional demeanor and a notebook already out. I showed him the note, told him everything I'd discovered, showed him my photographs. He wrote it all down, nodded in the right places, but I could see he thought I was wasting his time. "The thing is, Ms. Mitchell, we get calls like this a lot. Someone's neighbor stops being visible and people assume the worst, but usually there's a simple explanation. I know the difference between someone traveling and someone disappearing. I'm not imagining this. I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying that right now, We don't have evidence of a crime. The man who entered her apartment had a key. He could legitimately be family. And as for these photos of the SUV, he looked at my laptop screen. You can't actually see what they're doing. Could be anything. Could be smuggling. That man is Viktor Kozlov. He's wanted in Portland. I'll pass that information along to the detectives, but Ms. Mitchell, I need to be honest with you. Unless we have an actual crime or unless her family files a missing person report, there's not much we can do. After he left, I sat on my couch and cried. Not from fear, though I was afraid, from frustration, from the helplessness of knowing something was terribly wrong and having no one believe me. That's when I heard it. A sound from Mrs. Chen's apartment. Not loud, but distinct. Something falling, maybe, or being dragged. I grabbed my camera and went into my hallway, pressing my ear against her door. More sounds. Definitely someone inside, moving around, opening drawers or cabinets. I pulled out my phone and started recording video as I knocked on the door. "Hello, Mrs. Chen, is someone in there?" The sound stopped immediately. Complete silence. "I can hear you," I said, my voice shaking. "I've called the police. They're on their way." It was a lie, but I didn't care. I kept recording, kept knocking. Then suddenly the door opened. Just a crack, the chain still attached. Through the gap, I saw a woman's face. Not Mrs. Chen, someone younger, maybe 40, with cold eyes and a tight smile. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Who are you? What are you doing in Mrs. Chen's apartment?" "I'm her niece. I'm here to collect some of her things." The accent was slight but present. Eastern European, maybe. Mrs. Chen never mentioned a niece. Mrs. Chen has many relatives. Not all of them visit regularly. She started to close the door. "Wait, where is she? Is she okay?" "She's in a care facility. Early dementia. Very sad, but necessary." The woman's smile never reached her eyes. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." The door closed. I heard the deadbolt slide into place. I stood there, phone still recording, and knew with absolute certainty that I'd just spoken to someone involved in Mrs. Chen's disappearance. The story about dementia was a lie. Everything was a lie. I went back to my apartment and immediately uploaded the video to my cloud drive. Then I did something reckless. I called the number on Viktor Kozlov's wanted poster and left a message saying I had information about his location. If the police wouldn't help me, maybe the FBI would. The rest of Monday passed in tense silence. I kept my door locked, my curtains drawn. I set up my cameras to record both my door and the view of the alley. Every sound in the hallway made me jump. At 8 o'clock that evening, there was another knock. I checked the peephole and saw someone I didn't recognize, a woman in her 50s, professionally dressed, holding a briefcase. "Ms. Mitchell, my name is Linda Chen. I'm Margaret Chen's daughter." I opened the door with the chain still attached. "How do I know you're really her daughter?" She held up her phone, showing me her driver's license and a photo of her with Mrs. Chen. "I flew in from San Francisco as soon as I got your message. I didn't send you a message. The police called me. Detective Morrison. He said someone had filed a missing person report on my mother." Her voice cracked. "Is she really missing? Please tell me everything you know." I let her in, and for the next hour, I told her everything. Showed her all my photographs, the fake Robert Chen, the note, the woman claiming to be a niece. Linda listened, her face growing paler with each revelation. "I talked to my mother 10 days ago," she said when I finished. She sounded scared. She kept saying she'd seen something she shouldn't have seen, that she needed to tell someone but didn't know who to trust. I told her to call the police, and she said she would. That was the last time we spoke. When I called back the next day, she didn't answer. She hasn't answered since. "Why didn't you come sooner?" Linda's eyes filled with tears. "Because someone called me 3 days ago, claiming to be from her doctor's office. They said she'd had a fall, that she was in the hospital recovering, that she'd asked them not to tell me because she didn't want me to worry. They said she'd call me when she was feeling better. I believed them." She wiped her eyes angrily. "I should have known. My mother wouldn't do that. She'd want me there. The police think I'm paranoid. The police are wrong." Linda opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. "My mother sent me something a week before she disappeared, an email with an attachment. At the time I thought she'd sent it by accident. But now," she handed me a printed document. "Look at this." It was a scanned page from Mrs. Chen's notebook. Dense handwriting, dates, times, descriptions. I read through it, my hands starting to shake. Mrs. Chen had documented everything. 23 nights over the course of 2 months where she'd seen vehicles in the alley. License plate numbers, physical descriptions of 6 different men, notations about what they were carrying, and at the bottom of the page, one sentence underlined 3 times. Called SPD Tipline, spoke to Detective Harrison, gave evidence number 74392. "She did file a report," I whispered, and someone made it disappear. Linda nodded. My mother was a smart woman. She must have suspected something like this might happen. That's why she sent me this backup. She pulled out more pages. There's more. Names, company names, what she thought they were smuggling. She was building a case. I looked at the names. Victor Kozlov was there along with 5 others, and at the top of the list was a name that made my stomach drop. Detective James Harrison, Seattle PD. She was investigating a corrupt cop, I said. Yes, and I think that's why no one's helping us. Linda met my eyes. We can't trust the police, not yet. Not until we know who else is involved. Then what do? We find my mother, and we finish what she started. Linda closed the folder. Will you help me? I thought about the note under my door, the threats, the danger. I thought about how much easier it would be to just stop, to let Linda handle it, to go back to my safe life of photography and tea and pretending the world wasn't as dark as I knew it could be. Then I thought about Mrs. Chen, about her sharp eyes and sharper mind, about the way she'd trusted me enough to ask that question about witnessing something dangerous. Yes, I said, I'll help you. We spent the next 3 hours planning. Linda would file an official missing person report in the morning, make noise, contact news stations if she had to. I would keep documenting, keep watching, keep gathering evidence, and together we'd find out what happened to Margaret Chen. It was after 11 when Linda finally left. I walked her to the lobby, made sure she got safely into her rental car. As I turned to go back inside, I noticed something. Marcus was standing in the shadows near the building entrance, watching me. When our eyes met, he didn't look away, he just smiled, a slow, cold smile that sent ice down my spine. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call, his eyes never leaving my face. I ran back to my apartment, locked everything, and pushed my bookshelf against the door for extra security. Then I opened my laptop and started going through the footage my cameras had been recording all day. At 11:37, while Linda and I had been talking in my apartment, someone had entered the alley. The footage was clear enough to make out details. It was the woman who'd claimed to be Mrs. Chen's niece, and she was meeting with Marcus and 2 other men. They talked for 4 minutes. Then one of the men handed Marcus an envelope. Marcus counted something inside, nodded, and walked away. I'd just witnessed a payoff. Marcus was definitely involved, definitely being compensated for something. I was uploading the video when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Ms. Mitchell. A man's voice. Professional. Unfamiliar. This is Agent David Torres with the FBI. You left a message about Victor Kozlov. Relief flooded through me. Yes, I have information. He's operating out of my building. I have photographs, evidence. We need to meet. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. There's a coffee shop called Mariners on Pike Street. Do you know it? Yes. Come alone. Don't tell anyone else about this meeting. If Kozlov's people suspect federal involvement, they'll disappear and we'll lose our chance to catch them. Okay, I'll be there. Ms. Mitchell, be careful. Victor Kozlov is extremely dangerous. If he thinks you're a threat, he won't hesitate to eliminate that threat. The call ended. I sat there, phone in my hand, and realized that I'd just crossed a line. I wasn't just investigating anymore. I was actively working against dangerous criminals, and somewhere out there Mrs. Chen was either being held against her will or was already dead. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by my window, cameras running, watching the alley, watching for any sign of activity. At 3 in the morning, the black SUV appeared again. I photographed it, recorded it, documented everything. This time, I could see clearly what they were unloading. Wooden crates, at least a dozen of them, heavy enough that it took 2 men to carry each one. They stacked them inside the building's basement entrance, the one only Marcus had keys to. Whatever operation they were running, it was big. And Mrs. Chen had gotten too close to exposing it. As the sun started to rise, I prepared for my meeting with Agent Torres. I copied all my evidence onto a flash drive, made sure my cloud backups were secure. I wrote a letter explaining everything I knew and sealed it in an envelope addressed to Linda, with instructions to open it if anything happened to me. At 8:30, I left my apartment, hyper-aware of every person in the hallway, every sound, every movement. The coffee shop was only 6 blocks away, but I felt like I was walking through a minefield. Every person on the street could be watching me. Every car could be following me. I arrived at 8:55. Mariners was a small place, half full of morning commuters getting their caffeine fix. I ordered a coffee I didn't want and sat at a corner table with a view of the door. 9 o'clock came and went. No Agent Torres. 9:15. Nothing. At 9:30, I pulled out my phone to call the number he'd used. Before I could dial, someone sat down across from me. It wasn't Agent Torres. It was Victor Kozlov. Ms. Mitchell, he said. his accent thick but his English perfect. "We need to talk about your unfortunate curiosity." My hand was already moving toward my phone when Viktor Kozlov's hand shot across the table, covering mine. His grip was firm, but not painful, a reminder of control rather than a threat. "I wouldn't do that," he said calmly. "Look around the shop." I did. Near the counter, a woman in yoga clothes scrolling through her phone. By the window, a man reading a newspaper. At the back table, another man working on a laptop. All three glanced up at exactly the same moment, their eyes meeting mine for just a second before returning to their activities. "We're having a conversation," Victor said. "Just two people talking over coffee. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that needs to involve the police, yes?" My mouth was dry, but I forced myself to speak. "There is no Agent Torres, is there?" "Very good. You're as clever as Margaret said you'd be." He released my hand and sat back, looking completely relaxed, despite being a wanted fugitive in a public place. "She spoke highly of you, you know. Said you had an artist's eye, that you saw things others missed." The present tense threw me. "She spoke? You mean she's alive?" "Of course she's alive. What do you think I am, a monster?" He looked genuinely offended. "Margaret is safe, uncomfortable perhaps, but safe. Where is she?" "That depends entirely on how this conversation goes." He gestured to the barista, who brought over 2 coffees without being asked. Either he'd already ordered, or the barista was working for him too. "You've created quite a problem for me, Ms. Mitchell. All this attention, these questions, involving Margaret's daughter. It's very inconvenient. You kidnapped an 82-year-old woman. That's more than inconvenient, that's a federal crime." "Kidnapped?" He sipped his coffee, looking thoughtful. "Is it kidnapping when someone volunteers to help us, when they understand that cooperation is the wisest choice? Mrs. Chen would never volunteer to help you. You'd be surprised what people will do when the alternative is presented clearly." His eyes hardened just slightly. "But we're not here to debate definitions. We're here to reach an understanding. You have evidence, photographs, videos, documentation. I need that evidence to disappear, all of it. In exchange, Margaret goes home safely, and you continue your quiet life taking beautiful pictures. And if I refuse, then Margaret dies, and you join her, as does Linda Chen, who is currently at the police station filing a missing person report." He checked his watch, a gesture so casual it was terrifying. "You have something I want. I have people you care about. This is simple economics." My mind was racing. He knew about Linda. He knew everything. "How do I know you'll actually release Mrs. Chen?" "You don't. But consider this. If I wanted you dead, we wouldn't be having coffee. You would have had an accident. A tragic fall down the stairs perhaps, a random mugging gone wrong. The fact that we're talking means I prefer the simple solution. The simple solution where you get away with whatever you're smuggling? What I'm doing is none of your concern. All you need to know is that in 48 hours, I'll be gone. My business here will be concluded. The SUV will disappear, the basement will be empty, and everything returns to normal. Margaret can tell her stories about the suspicious neighbors, and no one will believe her. No evidence, no crime. Everyone moves on. Except the police already know. I filed a report." Victor smiled. "Yes, with Detective Morrison, who is a very dedicated public servant and completely uninvolved in my business. He'll investigate, find nothing, and close the case as a family matter. The evidence Margaret submitted, already erased by someone much more useful to me than Morrison, and the officer who came to your apartment. His report will note that you're an anxious woman with an overactive imagination. Detective Harrison." His smile faltered for just a second. "Ah, you found Margaret's notes. I know he's working for you. I know he made her evidence disappear. Then you understand how precarious your position is. Harrison has already flagged you in the system as potentially unstable. One call from him, and any future reports you make will be viewed through that lens. You're being managed, Ms. Mitchell. The question is whether you'll accept that management or force us to take more direct action." I thought about my evidence, my backups, my cloud storage. I thought about Linda at the police station, unaware that she was being watched. I thought about Mrs. Chen wherever she was, waiting for someone to help her. "I want to see her," I said. "I want proof that she's alive. Then we'll talk about your deal." Victor considered this. "Fair enough. Tonight, 10 o'clock at your building. Come to the basement entrance. Come alone, obviously. Bring your phone and all your storage devices. We'll make an exchange. Margaret for your evidence." "How do I know you won't just kill us both?" "Because killing attracts attention, and attention is bad for business. I'm a smuggler, not a psychopath. I eliminate problems efficiently. Right now, you're only a problem if you remain one. Stop being a problem and we all go home happy." He stood up, buttoning his jacket. 10 o'clock, don't be late. And Miss Mitchell, don't try to be clever. Don't call the police. Don't set up cameras. Don't bring Linda. The moment I suspect you're playing games, Margaret dies. Are we clear? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Good, enjoy your coffee. He walked out, his 3 associates following at casual intervals. Within 2 minutes, the shop was back to normal, morning customers coming and going, no one aware that a wanted criminal had just been sitting among them. I sat there for a long time, my coffee growing cold, my mind cycling through possibilities. Victor was right about one thing. I was in over my head, but he was wrong about another. I wasn't going to just hand over my evidence and hope he kept his word. I pulled out my phone and called Linda. Don't go home, I said when she answered. Don't go anywhere you normally go. Book a hotel under a different name. Pay cash if you can. Sarah, what's wrong? What happened? They know about you. They're watching you. I'm meeting them tonight to get your mother, but I need you somewhere safe first. I'm not letting you do this alone. You have to. If you show up, they'll kill all 3 of us. Please, Linda, trust me. I gave her the name of a hotel near the airport. A place random enough that they wouldn't think to look there. Go there now, turn off your phone. Don't contact anyone until you hear from me. How will I know you're okay? If you don't hear from me by midnight, go to the Seattle FBI field office. Not the police, the FBI. Ask for the agent in charge of organized crime. Tell them everything. Give them the folder your mother sent you. Sarah, please, I have to do this. I have to try. She was quiet for a moment. Be careful. My mother would never forgive me if something happened to you because of her. After we hung up, I sat there thinking. Victor expected me to come alone, scared, ready to trade everything for Mrs. Chen's life. He expected me to be a problem he could solve simply. But Mrs. Chen had taught me something during our Thursday evening teas. She'd taught me that in life, as in art, everything depends on perspective. The same scene looks completely different depending on where you stand. So I needed to change my perspective. I went home and spent the afternoon preparing. I copied all my evidence to 3 different flash drives. One held the real files. One held corrupted files that looked legitimate until you tried to open them. One held nothing but vacation photos renamed to look like evidence. I packaged the flash drive with corrupted files in a small padded envelope, the kind that would survive being tossed around. Then I did something that would either save my life or end it. I called a number I'd found in Mrs. Chen's notes. Not Detective Harrison, not Detective Morrison, but someone else entirely. Seattle Times Metro Desk. I need to speak to Robert Hutchinson, please. There was a pause. May I ask what this is regarding? Tell him it's about Detective James Harrison and Victor Kozlov. Tell him Margaret Chen sent me. 2 minutes later, a man picked up. This is Hutchinson. Who is this? My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm a friend of Margaret Chen. She documented a smuggling operation in our building and was kidnapped because of it. I have all her evidence, every photograph, every notation, every name. And tonight I'm trading it to get her back. Jesus, where are you? I can have police there in... No police. Harrison is corrupt. He's working for Kozlov. The moment police show up, Mrs. Chen dies. But I want you to know the story. I want you ready to publish it the second I tell you to. I need more than your word. I need to verify. I'm sending you files right now. Photographs of Victor Kozlov in Seattle. Video of payoffs to a building maintenance worker. Scans of Mrs. Chen's documentation. Everything except the one piece I'm keeping back. What piece? Insurance. Something that proves Harrison is involved. I'll give it to you tomorrow morning, after Mrs. Chen is safe. There was a long pause. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. Can I count on you? If this is real, if you can prove a detective is dirty and connect him to Kozlov, this is the biggest story I've had in 10 years. Yeah, you can count on me. But Ms. Mitchell, be smart tonight. Stay alive. Dead sources can't give interviews. I spent the next few hours setting up. I hid the flash drive with real evidence in my apartment, in a place only someone who knew me would think to look. Inside an old camera body I'd broken years ago and kept for sentimental reasons. The flash drive with vacation photos went in my pocket. The one with corrupted files went in my jacket. At 9 o'clock, I wrote a final email to Robert Hutchinson with detailed instructions. If he didn't hear from me by 7 in the morning, publish everything and contact the FBI. At 9:30, I left my apartment. I didn't bring my camera, didn't bring any recording equipment. Victor would check, and I needed him to believe I was cooperating. The basement entrance was around back, down a short flight of concrete stairs that led to a heavy metal door. I'd only been down there once, when I'd first moved in, and Marcus had shown me where to put my recycling. At exactly 10 o'clock, I reached the bottom of the stairs. The door was propped open with a concrete block. Beyond it, darkness. "Hello?" I called into the shadows. "Come in, Miss Mitchell." Victor's voice echoed from somewhere inside. "Don't be afraid." I stepped through the door into the basement. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust. The space was larger than I'd expected, filled with industrial shelving, old furniture, and maintenance equipment. A single overhead bulb provided weak illumination. Victor stood in the center of the room, flanked by two men I recognized from my photographs, and behind them, sitting in a folding chair with her hands zip-tied in front of her, was Mrs. Chen. She looked thin, tired, but alert. When she saw me, her eyes widened. "Sarah, no, you shouldn't have come." "I couldn't just leave you here," I said, then turned to Victor. "Let her go. I brought what you wanted. Show me." I pulled out the flash drive from my jacket pocket, the one with corrupted files. Everything, all her documentation, all my photographs, all my backups deleted. "Your phone." I handed it over. One of his men scrolled through it, checking my photo gallery, my files, my cloud storage apps. He nodded to Victor. "And your computer?" "At home, but I deleted everything there too. You can check if you want." Victor took the flash drive, handed it to the same man, who plugged it into a laptop set up on a nearby table. I held my breath as he clicked through the files, opening folders, scanning documents. The corrupted files were designed to look normal in directory view. He'd only discover they were broken if he actually tried to open them. "It looks complete," the man said in Russian. I'd picked up enough from Mrs. Chen's language lessons to understand. "Good." Victor turned back to me. "You see, Ms. Mitchell, this is how adults solve problems. With rational conversation and mutual benefit." He gestured to Mrs. Chen. "Cut her loose." One of the men took out a knife and sliced through the zip ties. Mrs. Chen stood shakily, rubbing her wrists. "Go home, Margaret," Victor said. "Forget what you saw. Forget this ever happened. Live quietly and die peacefully in your bed years from now." Mrs. Chen looked at him with pure contempt. "You're a criminal and a coward, perhaps. But I'm a living criminal and coward, which is better than being a dead hero." He turned to me. "Take her home. And remember our agreement. This story ends here." I took Mrs. Chen's arm and started toward the door. We were almost there when the man at the laptop spoke. "Victor, wait. These files, they're not opening. They're corrupted." Everything stopped. Victor's voice was very quiet when he spoke. "Ms. Mitchell, I thought we had an understanding." "We do," I said, my heart pounding. "Those are the files exactly as they were on my computer. I told you I deleted everything. Maybe they corrupted when I tried to wipe them. I'm a photographer, not a computer expert." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You're lying, which means you still have the real files, which means you're still a problem." He pulled out a gun, not pointed at me, pointed at Mrs. Chen. "Last chance, Ms. Mitchell. The real files. Now, or I shoot her, then you, and tear apart your apartment until I find what I'm looking for." My mind raced. I'd been so clever, so careful, but I hadn't accounted for them checking the files here now before we left. "They're in my apartment," I said, "hidden in an old camera body on my bookshelf, a broken Nikon. You can get them. Let us both go. Or I could kill you both and get them anyway." "You could. But I sent copies to someone, a journalist. If he doesn't hear from me by morning, everything gets published. Detective Harrison gets exposed. Your whole operation gets burned. You said it yourself. Attention is bad for business." Victor lowered the gun slightly. "You're bluffing. Try me. Kill us and find out if I'm bluffing. Or let us walk out of here, let me call off the journalist, and you still have your 48 hours to finish your business and disappear." The silence stretched out, each second an eternity. Then Victor laughed. "You know what, Ms. Mitchell? I like you. You're brave. Stupid, but brave." He holstered his gun. "Fine, we'll play your game. But understand this, I have people everywhere. If that story publishes, I'll know, and I'll come for you and everyone you care about. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. That's not a threat, that's a promise." "I understand." "Good, now get out of here, both of you." We didn't need to be told twice. Mrs. Chen and I hurried toward the door, up the stairs, into the cool night air. We were halfway across the parking lot when I heard footsteps behind us. I turned, expecting Victor or his men. Instead, it was Marcus, and he had a gun. "I'm sorry, Sarah," he said, and he actually did sound sorry. "Victor might be willing to let you go, but I can't take that risk. You know my face. You've documented everything. I've got 20 years of this life left in me, and I'm not throwing it away because you decided to play detective. Marcus, please. I liked you, you know. You were always polite, never complained, tipped at Christmas, but business is business." He raised the gun, and then the lights came on. Floodlights, from every direction, blinding and sudden. "Seattle police, drop your weapon!" Officers poured into the parking lot from 3 directions. Marcus spun, tried to run, and was tackled within 5 steps. More officers rushed past us toward the basement entrance. I stood there, frozen, not understanding. I hadn't called the police. I'd specifically not called them because of Harrison. Then someone stepped out of an unmarked car, and I recognized him from his photo in the news articles. Ms. Mitchell, I'm Agent David Torres. Actual Agent David Torres, FBI. We need to talk. The next 3 hours were a blur. The FBI arrested Victor Kozlov, his associates, Marcus, and Detective James Harrison, who'd been called to the scene by dispatch and walked right into a sting operation. They found 43 crates in the basement, filled with stolen pharmaceuticals worth over $2 million. Mrs. Chen and I gave statements. Linda was brought from her hotel. The evidence was collected, documented, verified. Finally, at 2 in the morning, Agent Torres explained. Margaret Chen did file a report with Detective Harrison. He did make it disappear. But Margaret was smart. Before she submitted her evidence officially, she sent a copy to the FBI field office, along with a letter explaining that she didn't trust local police. We've been building a case against Harrison for 8 months. Your investigation actually helped us. Your photographs, your documentation, it corroborated everything Margaret had found. But how did you know to be there tonight? I asked. Robert Hutchinson, the journalist. He's been working with us for 3 months, helping us investigate Harrison. When you called him, he called us immediately. We put surveillance on your building, heard your conversation with Kozlov at the coffee shop through directional microphones, and waited until we could catch everyone together. I looked at Mrs. Chen, who was wrapped in a blanket despite the warm night, being fussed over by Linda. She's going to be okay, I asked. Shaken up, but fine. They kept her in a storage facility across town, relatively comfortable, all things considered. Kozlov isn't wrong. He's not a killer unless he has to be. And me? Am I in trouble for not calling the police? Torres smiled. You called a journalist who was working with the FBI. Technically, you did exactly the right thing, though I'd appreciate it if you didn't make a habit of negotiating with wanted criminals. Trust me, I won't. They finally let us go at dawn. Linda took Mrs. Chen home. I walked back to my building alone, the morning light turning the sky pink and gold, the kind of light I'd normally be photographing. Instead, I just stood there in the parking lot where I'd nearly been shot, looking up at my building, at Mrs. Chen's window across from mine, and felt something I hadn't felt in a week, safe. That afternoon, Mrs. Chen knocked on my door. She looked exhausted but determined, carrying a familiar black notebook. I wanted to return this, she said, handing it to me. You should have it, for your records. I opened it. The pages were filled with her precise handwriting. Every detail of what she'd witnessed, what she'd investigated, what she'd discovered. The last entry was dated the night before she'd been taken. If I had just minded my own business, she said quietly, none of this would have happened. You wouldn't have been in danger. Linda wouldn't have been terrified. Maybe ignorance is safer. Maybe, I said. But safer isn't always better. You saw something wrong and you did something about it. That takes courage. Or foolishness. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. I smiled. Sometimes they're the same thing. She stayed for tea that afternoon, sitting in my living room like she'd done dozens of times before. We didn't talk about Victor or Harrison or what had happened. We talked about composition and light, about the photographs I'd taken that week, about her grandson's progress in medical school. But something had changed between us. We'd both looked into the dark spaces of the world, the places where bad things happen and no one notices. And we'd decided that noticing mattered, even when it was dangerous, even when it was foolish, because the alternative was to live in a world where people disappeared and no one cared, where wrong things happened in the shadows and everyone pretended not to see. That evening, after Mrs. Chen went home, I set up my camera by the window, not to watch for criminals or document crimes, just to photograph the sunset, the way light painted the buildings gold and amber, the way the city looked when you really paid attention. In the viewfinder, I could see Mrs. Chen's window across the airshaft. She was there, reading her book, her familiar silhouette sharp against the light. She was home. She was safe. And I'd learned something important. Sometimes the smallest acts of noticing, of caring, of refusing to look away could change everything. I took the photograph and added it to my collection. Not evidence this time, just a memory. A reminder that we're all neighbors in this world, and what happens to one of us matters to all of us. Even when it's dangerous to care, especially then. Thank you for being here with me. See you in the next story. Leave your like. It's quick, free, and shows me I'm on the right path. Subscribe and turn on the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.